Hi, I'm Matt Worst, and welcome back to another edition of the 4Ps.
The 4Ps. Professional. Political. Practical. Personal.
A wise person once said that saying one thing well is better than saying one thing dumb. If that's true, then it must be even more true that saying four things well is better than saying one thing dumb. Something personal. This week, probably a few weeks later than usual, we put together our backyard garden for the summer. What was once a dirt pit for our kids to play in when they were younger has turned into a rather respectable annual source of summer sustenance. Using seeds that we propagated from last year's crop of tomatoes, cucumbers, and various melons. And for the first time ever, we're adding butternut squash. We got a head start by germinating indoors to ensure a successful season. And with a colder spring, our fruits and vegetables were transplanted into the ground once things just got warmer, really this past week. I'm sure this will surprise you, but I've been watching over my recently germinated transplanted seeds like a nervous parent, ensuring proper sunlight angles, water, the right amount of plant food. I've even been researching other tips and tricks to find other nuggets of information to help these budding plants grow and thrive. The proper organic compost, supporting trellises and structures for climbing and stability, even perimeter fencing and protection against birds and squirrels, and even the right type of irrigation support. Of course, as we welcomed our first visitors to our backyard this past weekend for a socially slightly less than distant outdoor barbecue, my only concern wasn't really even about masking or how close we were getting to people, but the rambunctious children needed to stay away from the garden. No trampling feet, errant balls, overthrown cornhole beanbags. We all know that home gardening as a trend took off during the quarantine, but my green fingers actually took root well before COVID thanks to free products from longtime client Scott's Miracle-Gro. And I feel like I'm hooked, and this is going to continue for many years long thereafter. I even downloaded that app where you can take pictures of plants and trees to learn more about them. I'm that guy now who walks around the neighborhood taking pictures of trees. No, I never thought I'd be a fan of garden porn on Instagram or Pinterest, but I'd love to hear what you're planting this season and when, and share your pics. Something professional. The new great divide in and across the professional world is now determined by where you fall on the long-term work from home debate. And no matter where you look, there are op-eds in magazines and newspapers by major CEOs, lengthy LinkedIn posts and comment threads, management consultant research papers and data and analytics being dropped everywhere. There are many passionate opinions on this topic. There are a number of factors that will determine when, where, how companies should reopen offices, from location to demographics of employee to industry to productivity. We see opinions rooted in the importance of employee and company culture, time management, relationship building, collaboration, as well as individual empowerment and choice. We see generational and geographical lines being drawn, and it's getting a lot of people really riled up. Some businesses and companies have proven that they can be successful and productive and efficient with a remote workforce. Others require human beings to be together, in person. There's no magic one-size-fits-all answer, and we're just going to have to accept that. We can't be envious of friends or neighbors whose situations are different than ours. Other factors that companies have in place aren't necessarily going to correlate with what is right or important for our companies. For me, the most important considerations about reopening offices on a case-by-case basis are rooted in issues that aren't as well or widely discussed at the moment, which is DEI and GSE. As employees in the workforce, we're diverse individuals with different needs and skills and backgrounds and capabilities and ways of individually working best. Equity is about providing employees and even candidates that we're looking to hire with a quality of opportunity so that they can best perform in those situations. So businesses have to balance individual choice with their bottom line, respecting our differences while coalescing as a team. They also have to consider how to reopen responsibly so as to not waste space or energy or resources and time. Personally, I don't ever expect to work 5 days a week in an office ever again. With a 3+ hour daily commute if you combine both directions, I've given more time back to my company and my family over this past year. But as an extrovert, I also know that I'm more capable of greatness individually and as a leader while being in close physical proximity with my peers, my team members, the people I'm managing. I thrive on that kismet that derives from spontaneous interactions. But with many teammates all over the world already, so much of the interactions that I've been engaging with and would continue to engage in and around once we return to an office are going to be virtual and remote anyway. When and where clients and team meetings can happen in person, they should. But it's also not clear when other people are actually going to be in their offices. What if I go in and others are working from home that day? Being in person, that doesn't even make sense. So coordinating togetherness is going to be a significant logistical theme for months and years to come. So what's the right answer, if any? Now, one thing for certain is that resource management as a discipline just became a whole lot more important than just consideration of people and casting. Project management now also requires planning where people are as well as when and how they communicate with each other. So my advice for managers and leaders and even employees is, be employee-centric these next few months. Be flexible, patient, even tolerant. But not everyone's situation is like yours. So discuss your balanced approach to productivity at an individual level, partnership at a team level, and profitability at a company level, and then just keep the conversation going. Something practical. Yes, COVID-19 cases in the United States are dropping. Yes, more people are getting the vaccine. Yes, the CDC just updated its guidance that those who are fully vaccinated can take off their masks indoors. But no, the pandemic is not over. The New York Times interviewed more than 700 epidemiologists over the past week on when and how Americans should be returning to normal activities. Their POV is that the true end of the pandemic will arrive once at least 70% of people of all ages are vaccinated. And as of this week, fewer than 40% of people in the US are fully vaccinated. Kids under the age of 12 are still at risk. Teenagers just began getting their shots this past week. People who've been fully vaccinated are still contracting the virus. You taking off your mask still puts my kids at risk. And while some may be okay with that, I am not. Outdoors, sure. Let's open up a little bit. But indoors, I'm still not ready. And you shouldn't be either. Masks, social distancing, and other restrictions proved effective. And while we're all eager to return to normal, we're still not there yet. So for those who are vaccinated, we can and should remove the mask outdoors, even in some indoor situations. But this requires a level of knowledge about those in your vicinity, as well as a reliance on the honor system. And given our state of the world, I don't know that I trust the honor system. And I don't know that we can trust each other just yet either. Mask wearing is not only effective against COVID, but also against pathogens of all kinds. So even if you do want to take off your mask indoors, there might be situations where we never should take off our masks ever again. Cold and flu has dropped massively, and we've all acclimated to mask wearing to some extent. So my practical advice is this: keep those masks handy. Wear them in crowded situations. Let's consider wearing them on mass transit at all times and in other indoor crowded places long term, even starting this fall and winter. Personally, I am never going to go maskless on trains or subways or airplanes ever again. Something political. While Israeli-Palestinian tensions are boiling over again, resulting in tragic violence and loss of life, the most covered news story in the United States last week by airtime and ink print was the removal of the third highest ranking member of the GOP, not from Congress, but from the Republican leadership establishment within the House of Representatives. Wyoming Congressman Liz Cheney's ouster was rightly covered as a symbolic move that reflects the splintering Republican Party and the power that a losing presidential candidate still holds over a sizable percentage of elected officials and the electorate. The future of the Republican Party isn't really clear. But what is clear, however, is that those who have downplayed the big election lie, right, that Donald Trump rightly won the election, and the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol, still control leadership at the top of the Republican Party. Make no mistake, this is not about conservatism. It's about loyalty to Trump. Cheney had a far more conservative voting record than her replacement in the leadership role in Congress. But New York's Elise Stefanik, who was elevated into that role, is a Trump loyalist, which is all that seemed to matter. For the past 50 years, Republicans have preached the same values: character, personal accountability, fiscal responsibility, even for many years, support for immigrants. But it's all been a lie. With far too few exceptions, the Republican Party has lost the narrative. And Trumpism is the unfortunate result of the past 50 years of Republican racism, anger, self-delusion. It's really, that's what's at the core of the party now. Trump's appeal to the worst racist impulses of white voters is nothing new in Republican politics. But the white nationalist politics that Trump tapped into, viewed by many Republicans as a unique characteristic of an unconventional president, actually have deep roots in the Republican Party. Ronald Reagan, revered by many Republicans as the greatest president since Abraham Lincoln, but many don't know or have chosen to ignore that Reagan used race as a magnet to attract right-leaning Democratic voters. In the run-up to his presidency, Reagan often talked about African-American welfare queens defrauding the government. This was a dog whistle, a racist dog whistle that resonated with racists, but may have gone undetected by others. It was well understood by many white voters who threw their support behind Reagan, though. In backing Trump, Republicans made it undeniably clear that theirs is a party of white grievance. With Trump's election, Republicans were free to show their true colors and the true colors of the Republican Party. And that color is white. Despite their claims to the contrary, Republicans and the Christian right have never cared about family values. After all, how could the so-called party of family values support Trump, who has 5 children with 3 different wives and has made inappropriate sexual remarks about his daughter? But Trump doesn't represent Republicans lowering their standard. Instead, he proves how little they ever cared about these issues in the first place. Family values never mattered. They just found them useful in attacking everyone else. The Christian right would like American voters to believe that it's the political arm of Jesus come back to save America from its sins. Really, it's more like a lobbyist group for white America. The politicization of Christianity as a right-wing force is more about gaining power than serving Jesus. Republicans continue to support Donald Trump. It shows that they don't care about fiscal responsibility. One of the reasons Republicans supported Trump as their candidate and then as their president was because they saw him as a savvy businessman. But remember, this is a guy who lost more money over a decade than any other American. But the biggest, most detrimental legacy of the continuation of support for Trumpism, even after his presidency is over, is the assault on truth. The Republican machine of deception of today, denialism of their role in the election lie and Capitol riots, these are just the latest examples. But it's actually been in the works for a long time, way before Trump ever even came to power. The Republican Party has designed itself to utilize a fear of change. in both its voters and its elected officials. With more than 44 million Americans who were born in a different country, it represents the largest percentage since 1910. And this rapid change in demographics has caused some Americans to feel insecure and fearful. So in his run for the presidency, Donald Trump exploited these fears by vilifying immigrants and playing on the fears of white Americans. Peddling fear is what the GOP has always been about. And in the end, the impulse behind Republicans' continued support for Trump is that Republicans are afraid of America's changing landscape. They're afraid of losing power, while forgetting the responsibility that goes along with being in control. A great deal of Americans voted for Trump. But when the Trump era is studied years from now, it won't be the belligerent Trump supporters screaming to the press or at rallies that are going to carry the most blame. It won't even be Trump himself. The damaged, psychological, paralytic man from a broken home who makes up for crippling insecurity with boasting like a child won't be that. The party that has crowed about seriousness of intent and commitment to character does continue to support a man who has made fun of the disabled, defended the murder of journalists by dictators, boasted about assaulting women, and asked foreign governments to investigate his political opponents. We hoped the party would learn something from its latest electoral loss, but really this week told us that that would be a lie.